Perfect. Perfect.
Japan doesn't just exist in the present, it breathes through centuries simultaneously, where a thousand-year-old shrine shares a city block with a robot cafe, and both feel completely natural. This is a nation that turned isolation into an art form, spending 2 centuries perfecting itself behind closed doors before stepping onto the world stage and rewriting the rules of modernity. Before this journey begins, I want to try something special. I want to see how far these videos are going and how far you are watching from. Welcome to the channel where we explore the world through real stories, hidden places, and unforgettable travel experiences. If you enjoy travel documentary videos like this, please like the video and subscribe. It truly helps this journey reach more corners of the world. Now tell me in the comments, which country are you watching from? Let's see how far this video can travel. All right, let's begin. The geography alone reads like a cosmic joke. 4 main islands stretched across 3,000 kilometers of the Pacific Ring of Fire, sitting atop a volatile tectonic meeting point where 3 massive plates collide. Over 100 active volcanoes dot the landscape. Earthquakes strike with such regularity that buildings are designed to dance with the tremors, rather than resist them. Yet from this geological chaos emerged a civilization so refined, so precise, that it turned the tea ceremony into a spiritual practice and folding paper into high art. Stand in any Japanese city at dawn and watch the transformation unfold. Salarymen in identical dark suits flood the stations with mechanical precision, each step timed to catch trains that arrive within seconds of their scheduled time. But look closer. That same businessman stops at a centuries-old shrine, tucked between skyscrapers, claps twice, bows deeply, and continues to his office in a glass tower where he'll engineer tomorrow's technology. This isn't contradiction. This is Japan. Tokyo dominates the story because it must. 37 million people compressed into a metropolitan area that functions with Swiss precision despite housing more humans than all of Canada. The city doesn't sprawl, it stacks, layers upon layers of urban density where narrow alleys hide beneath elevated highways, and entire restaurant districts exist in basement labyrinths that somehow feel intimate rather than claustrophobic. The Yamanote line circles the heart of Tokyo like a mechanical river, connecting neighborhoods that feel like separate cities. Shibuya erupts in neon and teenage energy, its famous crossing swallowing 3,000 people every light change in a choreographed chaos that never produces a single collision. Travel 3 stops to Harajuku, and the energy shifts entirely. Here, fashion becomes performance art as teenagers in elaborate costumes transform Sunday afternoons into living manga panels. But Tokyo's true power lies in what it hides. Behind an unmarked door in Ginza, a sushi master who, trained for 3 decades, serves omakase to 8 guests, each piece of fish treated with religious reverence. The rice is body temperature. The fish is cut moments before serving. The entire meal unfolds in near silence because words would diminish the experience. You'll pay $400 for this privilege, and you'll understand why halfway through the first bite. The Imperial Palace sits in central Tokyo, like a green lung, its gardens and moats occupying some of the most valuable real estate on Earth. The emperor rarely appears, yet his presence shapes the city's rhythm. The palace grounds remain largely closed to the public, a deliberate void at the heart of controlled chaos, reminding everyone that some spaces exist beyond commerce and speed. Mount Fuji doesn't need an introduction, yet it demands one. This near-perfect volcanic cone rises 3,776 meters, with such geometric precision that it looks photoshopped into the landscape. On clear days, it dominates the horizon from Tokyo, 100 kilometers away. Hokusai painted it obsessively. Pilgrims climb it in summer, forming lines of headlamps up the mountain face like a glowing serpent. The volcano last erupted in 1707, covering Edo, Old Tokyo, in ash. It will erupt again. Everyone knows this. No one seems particularly concerned. The mountain's power isn't just visual, it creates its own weather systems, pulling clouds around its peak like a conjurer. Photographers wait months for the shot where Fuji rises clear and majestic, reflected perfectly in one of the 5 surrounding lakes. Most visitors see only clouds. This scarcity makes the clear views almost spiritual, as if the mountain decides who deserves to witness its full majesty. Kyoto presents a different equation entirely. While Tokyo races forward, Kyoto preserves. This city served as Japan's capital for over 1,000 years, and it refuses to forget. 17 UNESCO World Heritage Sites cluster within its boundaries. Over 2,000 temples and shrines create a Density of spiritual architecture unmatched anywhere on Earth. Yet Kyoto isn't a museum. It's a living city where geishas still navigate ancient streets in full regalia, and tea masters practice ceremonies unchanged since the 16th century. The Golden Pavilion, Kinkaku-ji, stops conversations. This three-story temple is completely covered in gold leaf, sitting at the edge of a mirror calm pond designed specifically to double its visual impact. The current structure is a 1955 reconstruction after a monk burned down the original in 1950, an act of destruction so shocking it inspired a famous novel. But standing before it now, watching gold reflect in water, the violence feels impossible. Only beauty remains. Walk through the bamboo groves of Arashiyama and sound itself changes. The wind moves through millions of stalks, creating an acoustic phenomenon that feels both natural and supernatural. The bamboo grows so densely that sunlight barely penetrates, creating a green twilight that it exists outside normal time. Tourists flood here now, but arrive at dawn and you'll have the path to yourself, surrounded only by the whisper of swaying bamboo. Fushimi Inari Shrine challenges physical endurance and spiritual commitment simultaneously. 10,000 bright orange torii gates form tunnels up the mountain, donated over centuries by businesses seeking prosperity. The hike to the summit takes 2 hours through an endless corridor of vermilion that makes photography impossible because cameras can't capture the overwhelming saturation of color. Halfway up, most tourists turn back. The upper sections belong to those who understand that pilgrimage requires effort, but Kyoto's real treasure hides in plain sight. The philosophy of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection and impermanence, shapes everything. Gardens are designed to show seasonal change. Tea bowls are valued for their irregularities. Buildings are constructed from wood that will eventually decay, requiring constant maintenance that becomes itself a form of devotion. This acceptance of transience creates a culture that honors both preservation and change without seeing contradiction. Osaka explodes onto the scene with unfiltered energy. If Tokyo is the suit-wearing businessman and Kyoto the refined aristocrat, Osaka is the loud, friendly merchant who insists you try his takoyaki and won't take no for an answer. This is Japan's kitchen, where food isn't just sustenance, but identity. The local greeting mukarimauka literally means, "Are you making money?" Business and pleasure merge into a single philosophy. Eat well, work hard, enjoy life loudly. Dotonbori district at night assaults every sense simultaneously. Massive mechanical crabs crawl on restaurant facades. Giant blowfish lanterns glow orange. The smell of grilling meat and frying octopus balls creates an aromatic fog that makes hunger involuntary. Crowds surge between tiny shops where chefs perform their craft in spaces barely larger than closets, somehow producing food that makes Michelin inspectors weep. The Japan seacoast tells a quieter story, one of fishing villages and rural perseverance. Here, the population decline hits hardest. Entire towns slowly empty as young people flee to cities, leaving behind aging communities and houses that will never be reoccupied. It's a crisis unfolding in slow motion, demographic math that no amount of government policy has managed to reverse. Yet even in decline, beauty persists. The terraced rice fields of Noto Peninsula create abstract art across hillsides, each level reflecting sky like a stack of broken mirrors. Farmers in their 70s tend these fields using methods unchanged for generations, knowing their children won't continue the work. There's no sentimentality in their faces, only the quiet dignity of completing a task that must be done, regardless of what comes next. Hiroshima carries weight that never fully lifts. The Peace Memorial Park centers on the A-bomb dome, the only structure left standing near the hypocenter of the atomic blast. Its skeletal frame, preserved exactly as the bomb left it, refuses to let anyone forget. But Hiroshima isn't frozen in 1945. The city rebuilt, thrived, and now produces some of Japan's best okonomiyaki while hosting baseball games where fans cheer with unbridled joy. Remembering and living forward aren't opposites here. The Seto Inland Sea spreads between Honshu and Shikoku like spilled mercury, its calm waters dotted with hundreds of small islands. Some have been transformed into art installations, entire islands dedicated to single sculptural visions. Naoshima Island hosts museums designed by Tadao Ando, concrete temples to contemporary art where the architecture competes with the collections. Visitors take ferries between islands, turning art appreciation into island hopping adventure. Shikoku itself remains Japan's least visited main island, a fact that feels impossible given what it contains. The 88 Temple Pilgrimage circles the island, a 1,200-kilometer walking route that takes pilgrims past Buddhist temples ranging from modest mountain shrines to elaborate complexes. Some walk the entire circuit over 2 months, others complete sections over years. The journey matters more than the destination, each temple offering a stamp that becomes both souvenir and spiritual passport. The Japanese Alps rise through central Honshu like a spine, creating a dramatic barrier between the Pacific and Japan seacoasts. These mountains top 3,000 meters in multiple locations, offering skiing in winter and hiking in summer. But they also preserve something increasingly rare: isolation. Remote villages accessible only by mountain roads maintain traditions that urbanization has erased elsewhere. The village of Shirakawa-go appears impossible at first glance. Massive thatched roofs, some over 60 centimeters thick, slope at angles so steep they shed snow like water. These gasho zukuri farmhouses, their name translating to praying hands, were engineered centuries ago to handle snowfall that could bury a two-story building. Families lived on ground floors while silkworms occupied the attic spaces, entire economies functioning under single roofs. UNESCO recognized the villages as World Heritage Sites, which simultaneously saved and complicated them. Tourism brought money, but also crowds that turned quiet agricultural communities into open-air museums. Residents still live in many houses, their laundry hanging beside souvenir shops, private life and public spectacle occupying the same wooden frame. Snow country dominates Japan's western coast, where Siberian winds pick up moisture, crossing the Japan Sea and dump it in quantities that bury cities. Kanazawa receives some of the world's heaviest urban snowfall, yet the city never stops. Trains run on time. Streets get cleared. Life continues with the casual competence that defines Japanese infrastructure. The city's Kenrakuin Garden, considered one of Japan's three great gardens, achieves different perfection in each season. Winter transforms it into a crystalline sculpture park where pine trees wear rope supports called yukitsuri, conical structures that prevent branches from snapping under snow weight. These supports become art themselves, geometric interventions that somehow enhance rather than diminish natural beauty. Kanazawa's Geisha district, Higashi Chaya, preserves wooden architecture from the Edo period. Narrow streets lined with latticed facades create corridors of shadow and filtered light. Some buildings function as museums, others remain active tea houses where geisha still train and perform, though finding one requires connections most tourists lack. The exclusivity isn't snobbery, but tradition, a world that reveals itself only to those willing to respect its protocols. Japanese onsen culture runs deeper than hot springs and relaxation. These geothermal baths, numbering over 27,000, across the archipelago, form a network of volcanic therapy where social barriers dissolve in sulfurous water. The ritual demands nudity and humility. You wash thoroughly before entering communal baths, a process that strips away more than dirt. Rank, wealth, and status matter nothing when everyone's naked and vulnerable. Some onsen remain segregated by gender, others welcome mixed bathing, though these grow rarer as modern sensibilities shift. The water itself varies wildly. Some springs run clear and hot, others appear milky white or rust-colored from mineral content. Each chemical composition supposedly offers different health benefits, though the real benefit might just be enforced stillness, time spent soaking while the world continues elsewhere. Beppu, on Kyushu's eastern coast, takes onsen culture to surreal extremes. The city sits atop such intense geothermal activity that steam rises from sidewalk grates and residential gardens. The hells of Beppu are springs too hot for Yuan. Bathing, their boiling waters creating landscapes of chemical color. Chinook Jigoku, the blood pond hell, glows iron oxide red. Umi Jigoku, the sea hell, radiates cobalt blue despite its 98-degree temperature. These aren't attractions manufactured for tourists, but geological phenomena that happen to occur in accessible locations. Locals cook eggs and vegetables in the steam vents, using volcanic heat as a free kitchen. Mount Aso, Kyushu's massive caldera volcano, contains one of the world's largest volcanic craters. The caldera stretches 25 kilometers north to south, large enough to hold multiple towns, farms, and an active volcanic cone that still smokes and occasionally erupts. Driving through Aso feels like entering another planet's atmosphere. The landscape shifts from green pastoral valleys to black volcanic desert in minutes. Nakadake Crater, when accessible, lets visitors approach an active vent spewing sulfurous gas and boiling mud. Helicopters monitor gas levels, constantly ready to evacuate tourists if readings spike. It's the kind of casual proximity to catastrophic natural forces that would never fly in more litigious societies. Yakushima Island, off Kyushu's southern coast, drowns in rainfall that exceeds 10 meters annually in mountain areas. This water feeds forests of ancient cedars, some over 7,000 years old. The island inspired Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke, and walking its trails makes that connection visceral. Moss covers everything in shades of green that don't exist elsewhere. Tree roots form staircases over granite boulders. The forest breathes humidity that settles on skin like a living thing. Yakusugi trees, the island's ancient cedars, grow twisted and gnarled from centuries of storms. Their wood, dense with resin, resists decay so completely that fallen trunks remain intact for millennia. Locals once harvested this wood for construction, creating buildings that outlasted the civilizations that built them. Okinawa operates on different rules than mainland Japan. The island chain, historically the independent Ryukyu Kingdom, was only annexed in 1879 and occupied by the United States from 1945 to 1972. This history created a culture that views Tokyo as distant and somewhat foreign. Okinawans speak a distinct language, eat different food, and maintain social structures that prioritize community over individual achievement. The islands also host the world's highest concentration of centenarians, people who live past 100. Researchers attribute this to diet, social connection, and a philosophical concept called ikigai, roughly translated as reason for being. Okinawans don't retire in the Western sense. They transition to lighter work, but remain engaged, purpose and social connection continuing until the end. The Battle of Okinawa in 1945 killed over 100,000 civilians, roughly a third of the island's population. The trauma of that conflict still echoes. Peace Memorial Park commemorates the dead with walls, inscribed with names of everyone who died, regardless of nationality. American, Japanese, Okinawan, Korean, names carved side by side in an implicit statement. War makes corpses, not heroes. The park overlooks cliffs where civilians jumped rather than surrender, believing American propaganda about enemy brutality. These cliffs remain sacred, places where living Okinawans leave offerings and pray for ancestors who died from fear, manufactured by their own government. American military bases still occupy roughly 15% of Okinawa's land, a presence that generates both income and resentment. The noise of fighter jets interrupts daily life. Occasional crimes by service members spark protests. Yet the bases also employ thousands and pump money into the local economy. It's a colonial arrangement that nobody seems able to resolve. America unwilling to leave its strategic Pacific foothold. Japan's central government happy to concentrate military burden far from Tokyo, and Okinawans stuck hosting an occupation they never voted for. Ishigaki Island, further south in the Okinawan chain, offers beaches that rival anywhere in Southeast Asia. Kabira Bay's turquoise water over white sand creates a color palette so perfect, it seems digitally enhanced. Glass-bottom boats let tourists view coral reefs without getting wet, though the reefs themselves decline from warming oceans and coastal development. Snorkeling reveals the damage up close. Bleached coral skeletons outnumber living sections in many areas. Climate change's slow-motion destruction visible to anyone willing to look beneath the surface. Iriomote Island, 90% covered in jungle, remains Japan's wildest. The Iriomote cat, a critically endangered wild cat found nowhere else, stalks this jungle. Only about 100 exist, each one precious and doomed. Development pressures mount even here, roads pushing into remaining wilderness, each kilometer of asphalt reducing habitat. Conservation efforts feel like holding back the ocean in sandbags, well-meaning but ultimately futile against economic forces that view wilderness as wasted space. Japanese castle architecture evolved through centuries of warfare into structures that merge defense, artistry, and psychological intimidation. Himeji Castle, nicknamed White Heron Castle for its brilliant white walls, survived World War II bombings through pure luck. A bomb fell on the castle grounds but failed to detonate. Today it stands as Japan's finest surviving feudal castle, its multiple defensive layers and maze-like interior designed to confuse attackers. Narrow stairs twist at awkward angles. Corridors dead-end unexpectedly. Murder holes in ceilings allowed defenders to pour boiling oil on invaders. Walking through reveals how seriously past occupants took the threat of siege. Matsumoto Castle, surrounded by moats that reflect its black walls, takes a different aesthetic approach. Where Himeji gleams white, Matsumoto broods in black lacquer, its dark exterior earning the nickname Crow Castle. The interior preserves original wooden construction, floors worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Steep stairs demand hands and knees climbing, the ascent to upper floors deliberately exhausting for potential attackers. The castle's moon viewing room on the top floor served peaceful purposes, a reminder that even fortresses weren't purely military. Lord sat here during full moons, composing poetry and drinking sake, while contemplating mortality. The juxtaposition defines Japanese culture, violence, and refinement coexisting without apparent contradiction. Nagoya Castle, largely destroyed in 1945 air raids, underwent reconstruction that sparked architectural debate. Should destroyed castles be rebuilt with modern materials or left as ruins? Nagoya chose reconstruction but couldn't replicate everything. The original castle used centuries old cypress timber, massive beams impossible to source today. Modern replacements use steel and concrete covered in traditional facades, theme park versions of authentic history. Purists argue this falsifies the past. Pragmatists counter that destroyed heritage shouldn't stay destroyed just to maintain academic purity. The debate continues, unresolved, reflecting larger questions about what preservation means in a country that both venerates and modernizes its past. Takayama, tucked in the Japanese Alps, escaped wartime bombing and modern development, preserving Edo period streetscapes. Walking its old town feels like entering a historical drama set. Wooden merchant houses line narrow streets, their dark latticed facades unchanged for centuries. Many still function as shops and homes, living history rather than museum pieces. The morning markets sell local produce, pickles, and crafts, operating continuously since the Edo period. Vendors set up at dawn, their routines inherited from ancestors who stood in the same spots generations ago. Takayama's spring and autumn festivals showcase elaborate floats, some dating to the 17th century. These aren't museum pieces wheeled out for tourists, but community property, maintained by neighborhood groups who view their care as sacred duty. The craftsmanship astonishes, intricate carvings and mechanisms that allow puppets to perform complex movements, all created before electricity or modern tools. During festivals, streets fill with spectators, the entire town pausing normal life to honor traditions that predate modern Japan. Shirakawa-go, a mountain village an hour from Takayama, preserves Gasho Zukuri farmhouses, structures with steep thatched roofs designed to shed heavy snow. The roofs resemble hands in prayer, hence the name Gasho, meaning praying hands. These massive structures housed extended families and silkworm cultivation, their multi-story interiors divided into living spaces below and silkworm rooms above where heat from the hearth maintained necessary temperatures. UNESCO protection saved the village from abandonment as younger generations left for cities. Now it's tourist heavy, buses arriving daily, transforming what was a dying agricultural community into a heritage site that feels simultaneously authentic and staged. The thatched roofs require replacement every few decades, a massive undertaking requiring whole village cooperation. Residents help each other with rethatching, the same communal labor system that built the houses originally. This cooperation isn't quaint tradition, but practical necessity. The roof's too large for single families to manage. Watching the work reveals how deeply interconnected traditional Japanese villages were, survival depending on collective effort rather than individual achievement. Japanese onsen culture revolves around natural hot springs heated by volcanic activity. The country has over 27,000 onsen, ranging from rustic outdoor pools to elaborate resort complexes. Bathing etiquette is strict. Wash thoroughly before entering the bath. No swimsuits, no towels in the water. Stay quiet and respectful. These rules aren't arbitrary, but reflect deeper cultural values about shared space and collective responsibility. An onsen isn't just about getting clean, but about participating in a ritual older than written Japanese history. Kusatsu Onsen, one of Japan's most famous hot spring towns, has water so hot and acidic it requires cooling before bathing. The Yubatake, or hot water field, channels spring water through wooden troughs, allowing it to cool while minerals precipitate. Steam rises constantly, the town perpetually shrouded in sulfurous fog. Visitors follow prescribed bathing rotations, moving between pools of different temperatures, a process believed to maximize health benefits. Whether the health claims hold up to scientific scrutiny matters less than the ritual's role in Japanese wellness culture. The belief that immersion in heated mineral water addresses problems modern medicine can't touch. Beppu on Kyushu Island takes onsen culture to industrial scale. The city has more hot spring water flow than anywhere on Earth, over 130,000 liters per minute bubbling from the ground. Some springs are too hot or chemically extreme for bathing. instead designated as hells for viewing. The blood pond. Hell glows deep red from iron oxide. The sea hell shimmers cobalt blue from dissolved minerals. Watching these violent expressions of geothermal energy reminds you that Japan sits atop massive tectonic forces. The same activity that creates hot springs also produces earthquakes and tsunamis. Japanese gardens reject Western concepts of nature as something to dominate or perfect. Instead, they aim to distill natural essence, creating miniature landscapes that suggest mountains, forests, or oceans through careful arrangement of rocks, water, and plants. Kyoto's Ryoanji Temple has Japan's most famous rock garden, 15 stones arranged in raked white gravel. No matter where you stand, one stone remains hidden, a deliberate imperfection, embodying wabi-sabi philosophy that finds beauty in incompleteness. Tourists photograph it obsessively, most missing the point entirely, treating it as a curiosity rather than meditation object. Kenrokuin Garden in Kanazawa took 2 centuries to complete, successive lords adding elements until it became one of Japan's 3 great gardens. It incorporates 6 attributes considered essential: spaciousness, seclusion, artificiality, antiquity, water features, and broad views. Winter sees gardeners wrap pine trees in rope supports, protecting branches from heavy snow while creating sculptural forms, practical necessity transformed into aesthetic statement. The garden's beauty isn't accidental, but engineered through centuries of refinement, every stone placed with intention, every tree pruned according to principles developed over generations. Japanese food culture elevates simple ingredients through technique and presentation. A perfect bowl of ramen represents hours of work, broth, simmered for days, noodles made fresh, toppings arranged with precision that borders on obsessive. Ramen shops often specialize in single styles, perfecting one approach rather than offering variety. This specialization defines Japanese craftsmanship across fields, the belief that mastery requires narrow focus, doing one thing exceptionally rather than many things adequately. Kaiseki, formal multi-course dining, treats meals as performance art. Chefs consider season, color, texture, arranging small portions on handmade ceramics chosen to complement each dish. The progression follows specific order, lighter flavors building toward richer ones, the entire meal orchestrated like a symphony. Eating kaiseki demands attention and respect, each course requiring appreciation before moving to the next. It's dining as meditation, forcing participants to slow down and notice subtleties they'd otherwise miss. Tsukiji Outer Market, after the main fish market moved to Toyosu, still thrives as food destination. Narrow alleys pack vendors selling fresh seafood, produce, and kitchen equipment. Tourists queue for sushi breakfast, eating at tiny counters where chefs work inches away. The quality astonishes, fish so fresh it barely qualifies as previously alive. Rice seasoned precisely, wasabi grated from actual root rather than powder. Prices remain reasonable because competition is fierce and reputations matter more than profit margins. Japanese convenience stores, or konbini, transcend their Western equivalents. They're not just places to buy snacks, but essential infrastructure providing services from bill payment to concert ticket sales. The food quality surprises foreigners expecting gas station fare. Onigiri rice balls, freshly made sandwiches, and hot prepared foods rival actual restaurants. The stores stay open 24/7, providing safety and reliability. Their bright lights and familiar layouts offering comfort in unfamiliar cities. They represent Japanese efficiency at its finest, maximizing utility from minimal space through obsessive attention to inventory and layout. Vending machines outnumber people in some neighborhoods, selling everything from drinks to hot meals to underwear. They work because vandalism rates remain low and maintenance standards stay high. A broken machine gets fixed immediately, the social contract demanding reliability. These machines embody Japanese trust in automated systems and collective responsibility, the assumption that public infrastructure will be respected rather than destroyed. Japanese bathing culture centers on onsen, hot springs fed by volcanic activity, heating water naturally. Towns like Hakone and Bippu built entire economies around these thermal baths. Visitors soaking in mineral-rich waters believed to cure ailments and restore vitality. The ritual matters as much as the water itself. You wash thoroughly before entering communal pools, removing every trace of soap and dirt. The baths aren't for cleaning, but for relaxing, the heat opening pores and loosening muscles while steam clouds everything in pleasant fog. Many onsen ban tattoos associating them with Yakuza organized crime. Though this slowly changes as foreign tourism increases, The unwritten rules feel intimidating initially, but make sense once understood. Maintaining hygiene and respect in shared spaces. Ryokan, traditional inns, offer experiences hotels can't replicate. You sleep on futons laid over tatami mats, the simplicity forcing appreciation of space and materials. Dinner arrives as elaborate kaiseki served in your room. Breakfast equally meticulous. Staff anticipate needs before you voice them, quietly efficient in ways that feel almost supernatural. Many ryokan include private onsen, allowing guests to bathe without navigating public bath etiquette. The cost runs high because labor intensity is extreme, each guest receiving personalized attention that demands significant staff time. Staying at ryokan isn't just a accommodation, but cultural immersion, a chance to experience hospitality refined over centuries. Capsule hotels emerged from practical necessity in cities where space costs everything. Businessmen who missed last trains needed somewhere cheap to sleep, leading to stacked sleeping pods barely large enough for one person. What started as desperate solution became tourist attraction, foreigners curious about sleeping in what resembles high-tech coffins. The pods provide surprising comfort despite claustrophobic dimensions, featuring lights, outlets, sometimes small TVs. Shared bathrooms and lounges compensate for cramped sleeping quarters. They work because Japanese society accepts trade offs between privacy and affordability, understanding that optimal solutions don't always mean maximum comfort. Pachinko parlors assault your senses immediately upon entering. Thousands of metal balls cascade through machines, while noise reaches levels approaching physical pain. Players sit motionless, aim for hours, feeding balls and hoping for jackpots that pay out in prizes rather than cash, skirting gambling laws through technicality. These prizes get exchanged at nearby shops for money, everyone understanding the system while maintaining legal fiction. Pachinko generates more revenue than Las Vegas casinos, entire buildings devoted to these machines blinking and screaming in coordinated chaos. The appeal mystifies outsiders, but taps into something fundamental about chance, repetition, and the dream that next ball might trigger cascade leading to fortune. Japanese work culture demands extraordinary commitment. Employees expected to stay late even after finishing tasks because leaving before your boss seems disrespectful. This creates toxic cycles where everyone waits for someone else to leave first. Entire offices sitting idle while pretending productivity. Karoshi, death from overwork, claims lives annually, heart attacks and strokes striking workers whose bodies couldn't sustain the stress. Recent reforms attempt addressing these issues, but cultural change happens slowly. The expectation of sacrifice for company good runs deep, tied to ideas about loyalty and group harmony that prioritize collective success over individual well being. Simultaneously, Japanese workers take perfectionism to extremes Western companies wouldn't tolerate. Construction crews bow to neighbors before starting projects, apologizing for upcoming noise. Department store employees practice greeting customers for hours, perfecting angles and timing. This attention to detail creates exceptional service standards, but also incredible pressure. Mistakes bring shame not just to individuals, but to entire organizations. The fear of failure becomes paralyzing, leading to risk aversion that stifles innovation while maintaining quality. Shibuya Crossing in Tokyo represents organized chaos at its finest. Thousands of pedestrians cross simultaneously from all directions when lights change, somehow never colliding despite apparent impossibility. Watching from above reveals emergent order within seeming randomness, people naturally spacing themselves and adjusting speeds to avoid contact. It's become iconic image of modern Japan, captured in countless films and photographs. The intersection where tradition meets modernity under neon lights and giant video screens. Standing in the middle as crowds swirl around you feels simultaneously overwhelming and strangely peaceful, thousands of individuals moving in unconscious coordination. Harajuku fashion represents Japanese youth rebellion, teenagers dressing in outrageous styles from Lolita frills to punk leather to costumes defying easy categorization. Takashita street pack shops selling accessories and clothing that would seem absurd anywhere else, but here becomes normalized through concentration. The fashion isn't about practicality, but self expression, creating identities through carefully constructed appearances. These same teenagers often work conventional jobs during the week, their weekend personas completely separate from weekday selves. This compartmentalization allows coexistence of conformity and rebellion, traditional values and radical self expression occupying the same society without contradiction. Akihabara transformed from electronics district to otaku paradise, stores selling anime merchandise, manga, video games, and maid cafes, where waitresses dress as French maids and treat customers like masters. What outsiders view as bizarre subculture represents billion-dollar industry and significant cultural export. Anime conventions worldwide draw massive crowds. Japanese animation influencing global entertainment. The neighborhood embraces its weirdness proudly. Neon signs advertising goods that would seem niche elsewhere, but here support entire businesses. Walking these streets reveals Japan's ability to monetize passion, turning obsessive fandom into sustainable economy. Japanese baseball fascinates because it's simultaneously familiar and completely different. The rules match American baseball, but the culture around it diverges dramatically. Fans bring elaborate cheering routines, organized sections singing and dancing in unison throughout games. Players bow to each other, managers apologize publicly for losses. The sport infused with Japanese values about respect and responsibility. Americans who play in Japanese leagues often struggle with cultural expectations as much as athletic demands, discovering that talent alone doesn't guarantee success when social harmony matters equally. The imperial family exists in strange limbo, constitutionally powerless but symbolically essential. The emperor performs ceremonial duties, his existence providing continuity with ancient past, while having zero political authority. Succession rules require male heirs, creating potential crisis as fewer princes are born. The family lives in isolated luxury, their private lives unknown, every public appearance carefully orchestrated. They represent living history, descendants of line claim to stretch back millennia, though actual historical accuracy becomes murky in distant past. Their role feels anachronistic, yet somehow fitting for nation that preserves tradition even while racing toward future. Japanese technology companies once dominated global markets, Sony and Nintendo becoming household names worldwide. Recent decades saw decline as Korean and Chinese competitors emerged, Japan's aging population and risk-averse corporate culture hampering innovation, yet Japanese engineering excellence persists in specific niches. Automotive technology, robotics, material science still showcase capabilities that lead industries. The bullet train network continues expanding, trains running with precision measured in seconds, safety records that shame other nations. This selective excellence reflects Japanese approach, perfecting specific domains rather than trying to dominate everything. Disaster preparedness reaches levels unfathomable elsewhere. Earthquake drills start in elementary school, children learning to duck under desks and evacuate orderly. Buildings incorporate advanced seismic dampening, swaying rather than cracking when ground shakes. Tsunami warning systems blanket coastlines. Sirens tested regularly so everyone knows the sound. The 2011 earthquake and tsunami revealed both strengths and weaknesses in these systems. Thousands dying despite preparations, nuclear meltdown at Fukushima, exposing vulnerabilities in supposedly safe designs. The nation learned and adapted, strengthening defenses while acknowledging that nature ultimately remains uncontrollable. Japanese environmental consciousness manifests in unexpected ways. Garbage sorting reaches obsessive levels, multiple categories for recycling, with specific collection days for each type. Public trash cans barely exist because people carry garbage home rather than littering. Cleanliness extends to public transit, trains and stations maintained immaculately, despite millions of daily passengers. The collective responsibility for shared spaces creates an environment where vandalism and littering feel like personal affronts to community, yet industrial pollution and overfishing show Japan's environmental record isn't spotless. Development often prioritized over conservation when economic interests conflict with ecological concerns. Japan remains nation of contradictions that somehow function as coherent whole. Ancient temples stand beside skyscrapers, traditional crafts thrive alongside cutting-edge technology, rigid social hierarchies coexist with pockets of wild creativity. Understanding requires abandoning Western assumptions about how societies should work and accepting that different cultural logic produces different but valid solutions. The country frustrates easy categorization, every generalization meeting immediate counterexamples. Perhaps that's the ultimate lesson Japan teaches visitors. Complexity resists simplification, and the attempt to understand fully might matter more than actually achieving complete understanding. The journey of discovery never really ends because each answer reveals 10 new questions waiting beneath the surface. Standing at the edge of this archipelago, where tectonic plates grind beneath your feet and volcanoes smoke on the horizon, you begin to understand what makes Japan impossible to summarize. This isn't a country that chose its path through careful planning, but one that adapted to impossibility so completely that the adaptation became its identity. The earthquakes that should have destroyed the civilization instead taught it to build differently. The isolation that could have left it backward instead created space for refinement. No external pressure could interrupt. The limited land that should have constrained growth instead forced vertical thinking. Density transformed into art form. Every limitation became a feature rather than a bug. What strikes you after spending time here isn't the technology or the temples individually, but how they coexist without apology. A Buddhist monk checks his smartphone between prayers. A sushi master's son studies robotics while still learning his father's knife techniques. The grandmother in kimono boards the same train as teenagers in cosplay, neither finding the other's presence strange. This isn't fusion or compromise, but parallel existence, multiple timelines occupying the same physical space. The demographic crisis looms unavoidable. Fewer children, aging population, villages emptying, entire regions losing the critical mass needed to sustain community. Immigration remains politically difficult. The question of who counts as Japanese, tied to ideas about blood and culture that don't easily accommodate outsiders. The economy that once seemed unstoppable now struggles with stagnation that no amount of policy intervention has cured. Now, these aren't small problems with easy solutions, yet writing off Japan because of demographic math ignores something fundamental about resilience. This nation has faced extinction level threats before: Perry's black ships, wartime devastation, post war occupation, each crisis predicted to end Japanese civilization permanently. Each time adaptation occurred in ways outside observers didn't anticipate. The same might happen now, or it might not. Predicting Japan's future based on current trends assumes trends continue linearly. An assumption history repeatedly proves wrong. What persists regardless of economic cycles or demographic shifts is the underlying cultural operating system, the values about craftsmanship, respect, and collective responsibility that shape how society functions. These values created bullet trains that run on time, convenience stores that never disappoint, and service standards that spoil you for other countries. They also created crushing work expectations, difficulty admitting mistakes, and resistance to change that sometimes borders on paralysis. The same cultural foundation produces both excellence and dysfunction. Walking through Japan changes how you see possibilities. A society can value tradition without becoming museum. Technology can enhance rather than replace human connection. Density doesn't require dirt or chaos. Public spaces can stay clean without authoritarian enforcement. These observations sound simple, but they challenge assumptions many societies treat as inevitable truths about how humans organize themselves. The lesson isn't that Japan has everything figured out or that other nations should copy its model wholesale. Cultural solutions don't transplant cleanly across different contexts. Rather, Japan demonstrates that alternative approaches to modernity exist beyond Western templates, that societies can industrialize and urbanize while maintaining distinct cultural identity, that you don't have to choose between past and future if you're willing to carry both forward simultaneously. The neon still glows in Shibuya. The monks still chant at mountain temples. The trains still arrive exactly on schedule. Somewhere in Tokyo, a ramen chef perfects broth he's been making for 30 years, still convinced he hasn't quite gotten it right. In Kyoto, an apprentice geisha practices shamisen, fingers bleeding slightly as she repeats passages her teacher's teacher's teacher once practiced. On Okinawa, centenarians tend their gardens, the same motions they've performed for decades, ikigai keeping them anchored to purpose and community. Japan continues, adapting in ways both obvious and invisible, holding contradictions in tension while refusing to resolve them into simple narratives. The country that shouldn't work keeps working, not despite its contradictions, but because of them, each paradox creating space for something unexpected to emerge. That might be the most Japanese thing of all, finding possibility in impossibility and making it look effortless.